What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Around the Table Sports. So we have a lot of recruiting news to get into today. Some recruiting news from yesterday I want to get in, and then after that we're going to talk about the top 10 programs in the nation as they stand right now with recruiting, who's going to fall, who's going to rise. It's not something you're going to want to miss. But before we get into all of that, guys, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. We're a new sports-related content channel, and we'd love to have you along for the journey. If you watch the video and you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up, and let me know what you think down in the comments. I like having a conversation with people. I like talking sports, so go ahead and get involved and drop a comment down below. But let's talk about the big news today, and that is the three big-time recruits that happened. We had three four-star, all 300 prospects committing to their respective colleges today. The first, the University of Indiana gets Jaquez Smith. Now, Jaquez Smith is out of Georgia, 6'1", 190 pounds, and he is the number 31 receiver in the nation, number 173 overall player in the nation. So this is a massive grab for Indiana. He's a guy that could come in and really get some playing time early, but he's also, I think, one of a more underrated prospect, right? I think that he's a guy that he can really, really flourish if put into the right system with the right coaching. His ceiling is really high. I'm very excited about this commitment. He's one that I want to watch going forward in his career. He's a name I want y'all to look out for. He's a guy that whenever he steps into the building, I expect him to get early playing time. He's very, very talented. But they weren't the only school on the recruiting trail today to get a big win. Two SEC schools are going back and forth. One of them comes as no surprise. The other doesn't. But I'll talk about the latter first. Texas A&M gets a massive win on the recruiting trail as Marcus Burris, number 101 overall in the nation, number 8 strong side defensive end, out of Texarkana, Texas, stays in state and commits to the Aggies. Now, this is a big win for a few reasons. One, you didn't let him leave Texas, which is a good thing. Two, you didn't let him go to UT, you didn't let him go to Baylor, and TCU has been banging in some really good recruits here recently. They had 2 5-stars last class, if you count a transfer and then Zach Evans. So this is a guy that is actually paramount to that Texas A&M recruiting class. Now, Texas A&M, you are kind of in a weird dilemma, right? Because you are a 1B in college football. There is your top dogs, which are 1, and that's your Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, LSU, Georgia. Those teams just seem to be better than everybody else. And then your 1A, which is like Oklahoma. Your 1B is where a lot of other teams reside, in my opinion. Texas, A&M, and they're great teams. Really, really top-level programs. It's just there's something missing that is keeping them back from being a 1. And especially with like an OU, if they had a defense, they would be on that stage with the 1s. I digress out of that, though. And I say all that because A&M, last year you had a rough year. You had a few losses, and a lot of pundits were pretty down on you. I, however, looked at it differently. I looked at your schedule, and I don't know who expected A&M to come out of that schedule any better than they did, even on a really, really good year. I mean, you just look at who they played, and that was a schedule that was set up to have a team just getting beat left and right. So A&M, I thought, was a team that a lot of people were really down on, even though they were a really good team, because they had lost games. And yeah, when you play LSU, Alabama, and Clemson, you're probably going to lose those games. Especially on a year like last year where LSU was all-time great. You're already in the SEC. You already took on Clemson as an out-of-conference game. But then you have Alabama on a year where Alabama, when healthy, is an all-time great squad this past year. And you have LSU, who was an all-time great squad this year. That's just a shake of bad luck. But this commitment right here is the thing that kind of will help propel you forward. A&M is a team that is on the outside looking in of the top 10 recruiting classes in the nation, and that's something that desperately needs to change for them to take that next step up. Because if we look at the landscape of college football, those teams I named as being the premier of college football, it shows up on the recruiting year in and year out. I mean, Alabama held it for like 7 years straight where they were the number 1 recruiting class in the nation, and they were just spanking people for 7 years straight, and they continue to do so today. But that gets me on to the other team that won. And yes, the rich get richer. Alabama got another massive recruit today. number 112 in the nation, number 9 overall, strong side defensive end, Monkel Goodwin, out of Fort Washington, Maryland. Now, this is a huge commitment for the University of Alabama because as it stands, the University of Alabama is ranked second in the nation behind only Ohio State. And y'all remember, Ohio State is a team that a lot of pundits have claimed they will break the all-time best recruiting class record this year. I have been on record in a previous video saying I think that it will happen, but it will happen with two teams. The University of Alabama will break it this year, and Ohio State will break it this year. A week ago, Ohio State had 305 points according to 24/7 Sports. However, with Tomais Adelea decommitting, that puts them right now at 298.52. Alabama sits at 287.93. And y'all, this is where it gets super interesting because Tomais Adelea, right now on 24/7 Sports, their crystal ball has him as a lean to either A&M or Alabama, with Alabama being likely. If Alabama lands Adelea, that puts their grade at a 295, only 3 points behind Ohio State, with both classes still having a lot of room to grow. But I think something else that's interesting to just kind of show you how good these classes are. 24/7 Sports ranks each player on a scale of 1 to 100, and then the class is given their average player ranking. Ohio State's is phenomenal at 94.75, and right behind that is Alabama at 94.5. But this is kind of bleeding me into that last topic I wanted to talk about, and that is the top 10 recruiting classes in the nation. And there are some teams that I think that are going to solidify themselves and remain. There are some teams that I think are going to fall. And then there are some teams that I think are going to rise. And I'd like to get into that right now. Let's talk about the top 10 as it stands today. We have Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, LSU, Oregon, Tennessee, Florida, USC, Miami, and Michigan. Now, the teams that I think are probably pretty safe to remain where they are. Obviously, the top 5 I think are going to be pretty safe. You look at Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, LSU, and Oregon. Those 5 programs still have a lot of room in their recruiting classes to grow, right? You compare a Tennessee or a Florida who have 24 commits for Tennessee and 25 commits for Florida as compared to Alabama and Ohio State who have 18 commits apiece right now. I mean, that's 7 commits left, and still they're lapping Florida and Tennessee in the talent pool. That's how dominant Ohio State and Alabama has been. But even a team like Clemson. Clemson has 1 5-star, but they have 15 commits and are still well ahead of Florida and Tennessee. So I think your top 5, your Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, LSU, and Oregon are all safe. All programs that have enough room to be able to continue adding kids to it, at the very least solidify their class, if not get it better. And if you look at that list, all of them are in line for some major prospects. Some big-time 5-stars, still leaning Ohio State, Alabama. Clemson is in the running for Corey Foreman. LSU's in the running for Corey Foreman. Mason Smith looks to commit there. And we've heard some rumors of Jaquincy McKinstry maybe going to LSU. You look at Oregon, there's been some chatter about maybe JT Tumalea surprising everybody and ending up at Oregon. There's just so much room for those top 5 teams that those right there are safe. But what about some teams falling out? Who do I think is in jeopardy of missing out of the top 10? And, we've kind of already talked about 2 of them, and those are the main 2. That's Tennessee and Florida. Now, while both Tennessee fans and Florida fans, you have a great recruiting class. Florida, you really kind of came on here lately and snagged a really, really good class. But that being said, your class only has so much more room. You have 25 commits right now, and I'd imagine you have maybe at max 4 scholarships to 3 scholarships left to give out. So while you have 3 to 4 scholarships left to give out, there's a team nipping at your heels at number 11 in the nation in North Carolina who has 16 commits right now, and they're not super far behind you. Florida, you sit at 260 points right now as compared to their 245. And we saw, for a guy like Adelea at Alabama, that sends them from 287 to 295. So by the time UNC fills their class, they're a program that could surpass a Florida, a Tennessee. And y'all remember, UNC had a 5-star this class. He just reclassified and will be a freshman this year, Trayvon Grimes. So they're a program that I think could rise, and I think the two programs that we've kind of talked about that I think will fall are Tennessee and Florida. And it's not because y'all are going to do anything, it's just because your classes are already complete at the beginning of the summer, whereas a lot of these other programs still have a lot of room to work with. But what about some classes rising before we close out this video? Well, we've talked about one of them, North Carolina. North Carolina had a 5-star who reclassified, but they've been really hot on the recruiting trail, and they could be in the running for some more guys. The way they've been recruiting, it wouldn't surprise me to see them snag a few more 4-stars and kind of shore up this recruiting class and be a program that looks to be building something kind of special right now. But outside of them, it's kind of familiar names for me. OU is outside of the top 10, but right now they have a lot of big names considering them. They have Caleb Williams, the #1 overall quarterback in the nation, and I fully expect Lincoln Riley, OU, Caleb Williams, and the remaining big names they have to shore it up and be able to finish at a top 10. Now, the other school that I think will move into top 10 is one that I wasn't sure about up until yesterday, actually, which is going to come in the next video right after this one. We're going to talk about that. But the University of Texas. Texas was on a downward trend, losing out on the Brockermeyer twins, and sure, they still had a formidable class outside of that, but you cannot lose players like the Brockermeyer twins in your own backyard the way that they did, especially given how deep into the legacy they were, and given what the Brockermeyer twins had said, that there just wasn't that dude at Texas. But all that looks to change with a commitment like they got yesterday in Quinn Ewers. That's a guy who completely can flip a program around. I'm talking he can be the Julio to Texas's Alabama. For those of you familiar, Nick Saban credits Julio with the guy as being the one to kind of the first domino to fall. And that's what Quinn Ewers can be for the University of Texas. They've missed some prospects, but if they can shore some things up, they have some players already committed in the class I'm really high on. Billy Bowman, just outside of 5-star out of Denton Ryan. I think that kid is phenomenally talented. He's a guy that if I had to do some rankings, I might even rank him a little bit higher because he is really, really fun to watch. So I think OU will rise into the top 10. I think Texas will rise into the top 10. And I'm looking at a team like North Carolina to also rise and possibly be in the top 10, with teams like Florida and Tennessee falling just because your classes are already almost done anyways. But that's going to do it for this video. Y'all, once again, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. But if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like. And if you have a player you'd like to talk about, or if you think that there are some big moves to be made in the recruiting world, drop a comment down below and let me know what you think. That's it for this video. See ya.